we have a very distinguished panel of some very seasoned veterans, and I want to get to everyone. I'm going to skip right through. I'm not going to do introductions. I want to jump right in. So, we're sitting here last year at Ad Club and 2019, all sitting, patting each other on the back on what a great year Out of Home had. Changed our growth projections a number of times. 2020 started off white hot, and then boom, middle of March, we're hit with a global pandemic. A lot of us had to make very quick pivots and changes to our business. A lot of us, as the year progressed, saw that we're going to have some of this change is going to be lasting. Certainly, I think the pandemic highlighted a lot of some of the cracks in Out of Home and put a lot of pressure on the industry as a whole. Certainly from a measurement from a measurement and an accountability standpoint. All of your businesses were dramatically impacted. I mean, we're looking at stuff we're looking at lasting change here. We're looking at a difference of the way people are moving in and out of cities. We're looking at, potentially a new commute. What's air travel going to look like? Really interesting stuff. But I think a lot of it will lead to positive lasting change for this business. So I want to start, just really want to get an understanding from each of you as the pandemic hit. Go quickly talk a little bit about a pivot that you needed to make for your business. But more, I want to talk about, where's the positive and lasting change and how you see this affecting your business in a real positive way going forward. And Jodi, I'll start with you. We had a really great call earlier, a prep call, and we talked a lot about what subway commuting is going to look like. So you want to share some thoughts there?
Sure. Thanks, Ryan. I'm Jodi Senese, for those of you who don't know me, CMO of OUTFRONT. And I own what Ryan said. I am seasoned. I've been in the industry in my 40th year. So I have a lot of perspective. And I'll get to the New York subways in a minute. And I do want to say that in 1981, when I started my career, I started at a company called New York Subways Advertising. So it's probably the nearest and dearest media format to my heart. So first, just about the pivot in general, I think one of the first things we needed to get out of the gate with was talking to our clients about audience. And, we were really lucky to have a product called Smart Scout, which gave us near real time impression numbers for all our assets. So one of the things we were able to see pretty early on is exactly where people were. So if there was less inner city traffic, perhaps we were able to find audiences in front of big box stores in suburban areas, and really being able to follow that flow. And I think by and large, the one thing that we did learn was that audiences, except for a few weeks through April and May, were not as dramatically impacted as some might have believed. So that was a pretty good learning for us. The other thing that we really needed to drill into was what our advertisers need. And I think that was a big pivot in messaging. And I think we got on board pretty quickly as an industry on that, helping to adjust our clients' messaging to be more appropriate, whether it was curbside pickup, whether it was contactless payment, whatever those messages needed to be. I think the other strength that we all saw were some of what we call the COVID winners. Anything DTC, direct to consumer, telemed, education, lots of hot categories. And I think we saw a lot of purpose, a lot of brands driving into purpose as things happened in the springtime with more social injustice and awareness of those causes. We saw a lot of smart brands like Uber and Twitter and Ford kind of coming out with really, really smart, contextually relevant messaging that addressed the social conversation of the time. But Ryan, directly to your point on subways, yep, we are seeing a lot of shifting urban mobility in our cities right now. When we look at transit, we don't think just about underground or subway. We think about street level as well. So it's buses, it's street furniture, and it's subways. And we see that people are just moving about cities differently than they were before. There's more emphasis in neighborhood. Not necessarily just the central business districts, but when you understand where people are and you're able to follow that flow, I think brands still have a very good opportunity to be able to engage that way. It's just somewhat different. You know, we were talking pre-call about how often we're going to be back in our offices. So if we're back 2 or 3 days a week, the reach is still there, but the frequency in a subway system might be somewhat less. Does a less congested subway system make for a better riding environment for passengers? Probably yes. Does that translate into a better advertising property for brands to engage those riders? You know, I would argue probably yes as well.
No, that's that. Sorry, go ahead, Jodi. Any more?
No, I was just going to say, you know, the other thing is that we hear a lot about the lessened ridership in the New York subways. Just to put that in context, it's at 1.8 million people a day, which is 31% of the pre-COVID numbers. And that number in context is still 2 or 3 times larger than the next largest transit system in the US on a pre-COVID day. And I think it's still twice the number of people that move through TSA and all the airports in the US on a single day. So still a pretty robust audience.
Yeah, no, those are great points, Jodi. Thank you. And since you brought up airports, Morten, I'll turn to you. You know, in a year where we saw the least amount of air travel in recent history, you were fortunate to win the Port Authority bid and pick up the 3 New York airports. So interesting opportunity for you guys, and certainly want to hear a little bit about what you think air travel and what that looks like in the future and what that means for advertisers. But you also mentioned something interesting on our pre-call, and it's really about spend a lot of time on calls talking about all the bad stuff that's happened in the at-home business and all the, the negative impact, but really there's a lot of positive to focus on as well, and maybe you could share some thoughts there.
Sure. Obviously, March and April were, I think we're all just coming to grips with what was happening. You know, it didn't help that the news media would show up at airports purposefully late at night and do their B-roll of no one in the airports. And so I think we had to kind of rethink everything. We had to rethink how we understood and how we tracked consumers, travelers going through airports, how we spoke to our airport partners, how we spoke to our clients. But at the end of the day, we are focused on what we have, right? So we have reached, the low point was 76,000 passengers on April 14th, I believe. And we've touched over 1 million several times for a day. So we're focused on what we have, right? We have a lot of travelers. We're more fortunate than conferences and concerts and sporting venues. But I think it's really important that our clients know that they can still reach people. They may not reach as many, but it's really quality over quantity. And that's the story that we're kind of marketing right now. And quite frankly, I think it's the right thing to say because there are still a lot of influential people getting on planes.
Absolutely. You know, Sean, I want to go to you because interestingly enough, your business, saw an uptick in the heart of the pandemic, and obviously being tied to essential retail has its benefits right now. But you need to think about your business going forward, as vaccines start to roll out and as, hopefully next year we move past the pandemic. How do you take some of the lessons you've learned in the pandemic and take some of that momentum and really capitalize on it going forward?
Yeah, thank you. It's a great question. I mean, the lessons certainly are we're closer than ever as a team. We're closer than ever to our partners. And you're right, our audience, 205 markets, 95 million people a month. And we talk to 1 in 3 adults, and we're tied to essential retail. So sure, we saw a little bit of audience fluctuation, but we've since midsummer been back up against pre-COVID levels. But back in March and April, people don't want to be sold to, right? We weren't worried about the next thing we're going to buy. We're worried about our families, our lives, our jobs, our communities. So we program a show every day throughout the country, and our whole show shifted tone and mindset towards how are we a good citizen to our brand and agency partners, our communities, our consumers, et cetera. And that was as much, I think, the pullback in ad spend in March and April was people just didn't have the right thing to say and didn't know what to say because this is, obviously unprecedented, to use the buzzword of the year. But coming out of that, we're closer than ever to brand and strategy teams thinking about consumer context, consumer behavior. Our insights team publishes a monthly update that we send out to partners where our basic value proposition is we talk to people 3 to 5 times a month, 3 to 5 minutes at a time. So 15, 20 minutes of somebody's uninterrupted life on a day that they spend a lot more money. Fuel day is a surrogate for your Walmart trip, your grocery trip, your McDonald's stop, whatever it is. So as a brand or an agency, it's an interesting contextual targeting point, but how are people behaving? To Morten's point, if you're out now, in many cases, it's a more valuable trip. It's that foraging trip to grab groceries, to go to the store to do these other things. But if people are out and about, they're behaving differently. So brands are asking us is how do we look ahead? And I think for us, it's been an opportunity to have a different and more strategic conversation with partners about audience and consumer behavior, not about a screen or a sign and is traffic up or down. And I think it's the year that, unlike any time in our professional careers, the playbook literally had to get thrown out the window, right? Because there wasn't a fall television season. The upfront, was in disarray, although kind of still happened. But a lot of the big bets, if you will, that are legacy media tactics either aren't there or have a lot different values. So for us, it opened up a lot of opportunity to get the conversation into more strategic discussion about where consumers going. And then you have to show up with value. In our case, we're fortunate to have credit cards, device IDs, some other signals to talk about our audience and give some measurability on it. So whether you're trying to sell a car or a mortgage or something more consumable like a soda or a snack, we can measure that. And brands, I would say, are certainly open-minded to that audience and consumer behavior conversation. And there's tons of innovation in this sector. The folks on this call have been doing it, for a long time. And I think it's an opportunity where brands are looking to arbitrage value, right? Where can they be first? Where can they find opportunity? Where they're not competing necessarily for the priciest real estate. And as the world emerges from the COVID impact, I think we're seeing, at least in our platform, we're seeing some of the early days of that recovery.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Monchiere, you represent clients in the casino and hospitality space. Obviously, two areas greatly impacted. But again, something you mentioned on our prep call was, no matter what business you're in, you feel like all your clients have, a sentiment, or at least some level of focus towards healthcare, right? So as we see brands in a number of different categories, think they kind of always have to consider now some sort of healthcare or some sort of slant like that. Do you want to elaborate a little bit more on that?
Sure. So one of the things, I'm Monchiere Holmes-Jones, Nashville, Tennessee, MOJO Marketing and PR. One of the things I knew in the immediacy from a pivot standpoint was all about getting my clients to tell the true story, the most authentic story, and do that where everybody can see it, to save their businesses, to keep them alive, to keep the campaigns alive. And one of the things that was relevant that it is early on was that we're going to have to be socially focused. But now we've transitioned to let's everybody be health focused, and let's look at the health of our people, if that be just the culture of the people that we're trying to recruit for hire, or if that's actually everything that we're dealing with vaccines today. And so we don't want to be selling our snowballs or our ice cream without actually appealing to aspiration. And so from a brand standpoint, we wanted to make sure that that was seen not just ever in digital or print, that it stayed integrated. And our strategy has always been to include outdoor. One of the reasons we are on this panel is because we've done many experiential campaigns that had outdoor. So our limits of including outdoor was never, it's never been that it was a separate entity or a separate plan. It was always included. So, when we look at what we're planning for 2021 currently with our nonprofits, some of our social justice type clients, everybody has a healthcare focus. What does that mean? It is, you can't talk to your consumer and your constituent without understanding where they're, how they're living. And that may be, encouraging them in and around what keeping safe or getting a vaccine or not getting a vaccine, whatever. We all want people to get the vaccine. Don't quote me on that. But the goal is we want your business to actually have a healthcare focus, because that's what we all need across the United States to get healthy. And so that's kind of where we're going with our campaigns. We're not doing 1 year marketing campaigns anymore. If somebody's throwing you it's 1 year marketing plan, they're throwing you crap. But that's hard when you're trying to media plan. And I understand from the outdoor standpoint and a seller standpoint, that's hard. But we're definitely looking at everything quarter by quarter to really make it make sense.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's interesting, and brands pivoting and sellers having to pivot and certainly be more flexible and align with kind of probably what's happening with their digital strategies. Michael, interesting, joining Lyft and Lyft and Halo, Lyft and Halo taking part of or becoming a part of the outdoor landscape is interesting in itself. Obviously, Lyft, a major name in the gig economy, and ride sharing has, I think, a tremendous amount of upside for the out-of-home marketplace. What are you seeing, or from that perspective, in terms of kind of launching it on the tail end of a very challenging year with a lot of upside to go? But how do you look at the business in terms of what you're seeing? Obviously, right now there's opportunity around anything above ground formats, right. Giving new life to kind of where the taxi top business was, and no longer certainly being just taxi tops are being looked at that. So it's a much more integrated approach. So you want to talk a little bit about Lyft's thinking and what's the appeal in the out-of-home marketplace right now?
Absolutely. By the way, that was a good setup. I appreciate that. You did a little bit of my heavy lifting, and I also want to amplify a number of points that Jodi made as well. As hard as it's been, the past year has been a real opportunity. It's creating a real opportunity for our business moving forward. Life will surely slowly come back to normal, but I think we all agree it'll be a new normal. Among many important things, COVID has changed the way we view our relationship to the office and workplace. The commute and overall consumer journey, as we know it, will continue to be affected minimally this coming year, if not forever. And this will have a major effects on cities and transit usage, all obvious points, everything that we're as individuals experiencing in our lives. Work from home is clearly not a fad, so we can assume that more people will work remotely or blend their time between the office and home. This opens a huge potential for more hyper-local, targeted out of home. What we believe very strongly is that the neighborhood is the next platform to bank on in this medium, as it provides a natural affinity group to market to. And digital rideshare and digital taxi tops at scale, and I think the operative word there is at scale, particularly as you move it around different metropolitan areas, has the potential to be the best solution to reach those neighborhoods, which is why Lyft is heavily investing in our mobile digital Halo rooftop network in New York City. In New York, where we've launched, it's our first market with more coming online in 2021. We know that people are spending as much time in Dumbo and Brooklyn Heights and Williamsburg as they are in Wall Street and Soho and Midtown. So what we really need, Ryan, is for the out-of-home planners and buyers to acknowledge this, no longer treating this format as a taxi top or just a taxi top. And, obviously, and historically being put into the last consideration set when it comes to planning. So, we're optimistic for this coming year. And again, I just want to echo what everyone else on the panel has said so far as to why we believe we should view the future, this next 12 months with optimism.
Yeah, no, I think that's a point well taken, because I think one thing when I look at it, when I talk to clients, even through the heart of the pandemic, there really wasn't, oh my God, out of home's dead and buried. That's it. It's really it's really more the conversation's more about, we're really excited about when we can really get back in. And we saw that across the board and kind of the willingness to, and the conversations that we're having now in planning for 2021. So, but we're still sitting here. We know first half of 2021 is going to be a little bit up in the air. And I think the challenge now for the whole industry is to really, how do we convey to clients that there is value in 2021, there is value in some of these formats, there is value in unlocking kind of some of these trends that are now kind of did not be fads, but will probably be more commonplace. So the rush hour probably is going to look a lot differently in major markets. The neighborhood, certainly when you think about how people have moved out of major metros into smaller neighborhoods, or suburban neighborhoods, what does that look like? And out of home has an ability and a potential to reach all differently. So Jodi, I want to come back to you just quickly. What are some things OUTFRONT are doing to kind of change the conversation just around, where the opportunity lies in out of home now? You're on mute, Jodi. I knew that was going to happen at least once.
That happened because I had two dogs. So one of the things that we're looking at is, I referenced the number of subway riders. So that's kind of the how many. I think the who becomes significant as well. So we just finished some research that we're actually going to launch tomorrow with M4. So here's a little bit of a sneak peek to understand, what the ridership actually looks like. And what we're learning is that they are younger. So, 80% 18 to 50, with 50% of those being 18 to 34, overwhelmingly single, 70% college graduates. So we're seeing a very robust bucket of what those riders look like. I know that there was a lot of conversation about them just being essential workers. A lot of them are. Essential workers are important, but essential workers, are really a big bucket of diversity and different kinds of professions. So we're seeing that. We are also looking at the 15-minute city and people being more localized. We see that as a good thing. Less congestion, I think, is just simply going to be a better environment. We just launched something in the subways this week on our live boards that includes a QR code. And people being less jostled and having more time and more room give them more time or more ability to engage with those codes. And I think we're going to see campaigns that engage more deeply that way. I think the thing that we also saw in some of the Harris research that the OAAA launched a couple of weeks ago is that people are very eager to get back out of home, and that being out of home is going to be associated with joy and a mindset that's going to have them more receptive to brand engagement. Hey, look, there's a lot of digital fatigue. People are sick and tired of sitting on their couches, staring at their mobile phones all day long. We are going to be looking at a vaccine that's going to be more widely deployed over the next couple of months. We're going to be looking into springtime, and we're going to be looking at a population with a lot of pent-up energy, desire to get out of home, to live their lives again, to go to restaurants, to get back to their offices, even if it's 2 or 3 days a week. Even if it's more staggered work hours, we may not be getting in at 7 in the morning. If we get in at 9:30, it kind of doesn't matter. I think we're going to be looking at a gentler lifestyle actually getting out of this. Some of these changes will absolutely be structural. And I think that we are going to be marketing to a lot of positivity going forward.
Yep, no, I agree. And Monchiere, we were talking about that you're in Nashville, right? That's a market that is, has seen a tremendous amount of growth in the past few years, and certainly from an out-of-home perspective as well. And we were talking just earlier in the prep call about, hey, we think that there is going to be a good amount of we were talking about millennials, and then how, will they come back to the big cities, or will they, markets like Nashville or Dallas or Austin or a Phoenix or a Denver or Minneapolis, will they benefit? And I think there's a good degree of that happening. What are you seeing in Nashville, and do you think that's a trend that will certainly stay on?
Yeah, I think Nashville has done a great job. Shout out to Nashville for just making people love it to the point of no return. So it has been a conversation for the last 10 years, and I think it's going to keep going. So the folks that have come, I think they found a way to stay. Like I mentioned to you guys, 5 years ago, it was like 80 people per week getting new licenses in this market. And so I see with everything going on, Broadway, downtown, it's like nothing ever changed. That's not a good thing, but it's not like nothing has changed. They are out there every night, every weekend. It is still the tourist trap that it was before. And so folks are finding a way to kind of use that as an escape, but at the same time, the locals are enjoying it.
Yeah, and are your clients, your brands, are they embracing that? I know some of my clients certainly are in this.
We did something.
Some of my clients.
Yeah, definitely. We actually did some mobile outdoor for something in June, July, August that just needed to get a messaging out in and around the CARES Act. And we were like, well, how do we do that? Well, everybody's walking in and around Broadway. Let's go. We needed this messaging in that area. And we did some mobile outdoor around that time. So I would say that the clients are open to it. Innovation, anything that they think is innovation, and outdoor, like you said before, has been innovative since the beginning of time. I think they have an opportunity to be a little more storytellers and take on that job from a brand perspective, and actually not just be that one or two static ad or digital ad, but actually be a part of the whole story a little longer term. That is going to benefit, I think, outdoor, but also our brands.
Yeah, no, definitely. We are we're running a little tight on time, but I'm gonna try Sean and Morten and Michael. I do want to get to each one of you one more time. Uh, Michael, I think for you, interesting starting off with with Lyft in New York. I think it's a similar question. And you think about think about your business. Are you looking at markets like a Nashville? You're probably hearing all the time. You have to scale in New York and LA. You have to scale in New York and LA. Those are the markets that are probably going to come back online last. Coming out of the pandemic, most likely or will take the most time. Are you looking at markets like Nashville or Austin? You see that opportunity there, and certainly that being more than just a trend, and hopefully, kind of what we were all seeing, certainly on the national side of out of home, we start to see brands start to spread their dollars around outside of New York and LA, and seeing the value in a market like a Nashville or an Austin or a Dallas or even an Atlanta or Minneapolis, Denver, so forth.
Yeah, I would say in the immediate term we're focusing on major markets, but Lyft Media is focused on reimagining transportation media across all surfaces, and there's not one size fits all. Opportunities in secondary, tertiary markets could include static signs, right? The idea is to just be present, again, be out in the neighborhood where we know audiences live. I want to make one quick point, which I think is a harbinger of good things to come going forward, just flipping around a little bit, Ryan, which is, I don't want us to lose sight of, I think it was maybe to some a small announcement, but I think it was really great to see on December 10th, that the leading out-of-home supply-side platforms, Adomni, Broadsign, Place Exchange, Verizon, and Vo, and Vistar joined together to begin the process of defining standards for programmatic digital out-of-home. The reason why I make the dislocation of this past year, I hope, is going to galvanize the industry to focus on ways to sort of collaborate. Typically this has been a billboard heavy business, sort of like dictated to by like sort of 4 large players. And I see that there's a real opportunity for us to do more collaborating and think about, maybe in an unwired fashion, working at the street level to prove that we have a rightful place at the table alongside desktop and the mobile phone when it comes to real planning and TV.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we're investing a lot of time and energy and resources behind what the programmatic marketplace looks like for our clients, and how we can increase the amount of ways we can engage with inventory. And Sean, to that point, I know that you guys are ahead of this, and certainly you play in I would say of all the players, you don't play in the just billboards on the side of the road space, which certainly that home market is a big part of. You're seeing budgets. I've seen, certainly from my clients, you're seeing budgets outside of out of home. And talk a little bit about how you're getting your business ready to be ready to work in a number of those different channels.
Yeah, and agree with a lot of what's been said today. I mean, you're right. I mean, we're a national platform, video, low frequency, et cetera. So pretty atypical compared to a lot of things in the digital out of home bucket. And we work with broadcast, digital, retail shopper, out of home, et cetera. But for us, it's all grounded in the consumer. I mean, an old boss whose mantra was, I never lost money following the consumer. And I think, Sophie Kelly from Diageo in one of the early panels talked about, ultimately, this all ladders back to comms planning. To Monchiere's point, I mean, no one's buying media on an annual basis right now, but they're certainly planning their business for the next year or the next several years, 5 to 10 years, even in some cases. And I'll use QSR as an example. We work a lot with the QSR category, huge correlation to QSR purchasing, and we've proven a lot of causality and raising check size and all that. But that business is going through a total transformation that's been accelerated by COVID, right? They're moving to contactless ordering. They're moving to drive-through only restaurant concepts. Franchisee owners obviously are trying to drive business through their own apps, not the third-party services, because there's a lot of loss of profit there. I mean, food costs and labor costs in the QSR business, that's what you can control and drive profitability. So it's not just about getting somebody to go to McDonald's or Burger King or Taco Bell or wherever, but it's retraining consumer behavior over time. And for us, it's this serialized, habitual, week in, week out engagement. So you've sort of got permission to tell your brand story to consumers. So we're starting with, sort of what's your comms planning strategy? What's the objective? How can we help you win? And then ultimately it's sort of a chutes and ladders down the budgeting tree, where to some clients, if it's not on a screen in my living room, it's not video. To other clients, video is holistic, it's social video, online video, out-of-home video, which is a real thing now at scale. But ultimately, we're trying to be a better publisher partner because what we hear from brands and agencies is we're scenario planning every quarter. But I had the head of an agency network tell me at an event last month, any publisher partner that can help us go from scenario planning to real consumer behavior predictability just immediately goes up the chain as far as value. And I think this is an industry where there's been a lot of innovation hiding in plain sight, is how I look at it. Then the panels here, the companies they represent, and many others, it's an opportunity for all of us to move past signs and screens and conversations around audiences, consumer behavior, because that, to Michael's point, there's going to be changes long term in how we live our lives, but a number of those are pretty positive for this collective digital out-of-home medium as an opportunity for brands.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Morten, I want to end with you because I'm curious, because I fly a lot, and as does much of our audience and our panelists, I'm sure as well. And talking about positive experiences, people don't often think about the airport. So what is the and you talked a little bit about what the new Newark might look like, and obviously we have two relatively newer airports now in New York, but that's happening in other cities too. So what is it going to look like for what's the new airport going to look like for advertisers and ultimately consumers, do you think, going forward?
I mean, look, if I am putting my optimistic hat on, I think all of us can agree that we look forward to travel when maybe a year ago at this time, we were maybe dreading getting on a plane from time to time, which has never happened to me. I think that there's a joy that people want to experience by connecting and meeting new people and obviously getting away from the norm. And I think that's going to lead to people taking things a little bit slower, being a little kinder. And that's not just in the travel space. I think what's going to happen for us is that, when you have moments of turmoil, you kind of have to focus, right? And so we understand our business better than we did a year ago, because you have to look at every single aspect of it. So we are working on our audience, we're working on our measurement, we're working on the technology that we're going to input. And it's really kind of understanding, like I'll give you a stat, right? So we have the largest private airfield network in the country, and that is now popular, and that business is exploding. At one point, Denver Airport was the busiest airport in the country. So it's about telling the stories that while the international travel on the coasts may be down, the large hub airports are experiencing crazy volumes, right? And relatively speaking. So for us, it's about being opportunistic with our brands, being ready to react, right? Providing them the opportunity. And the truth is too, being price aware to what's going on in the marketplace. And then trying to do all of that while we're doing Zoom calls with each other.
No, and I think that awesome points. And I'm sorry, we are out of time. I would love to have done Q&A. I could have spent another half an hour with each of you. Certainly all wonderful insights. I can't thank you all enough for joining us today. With regards to the audience, please feel free to reach out to each panelist. Feel free to reach out to the Ad Club and get some more information on this. And certainly a number of these topics will be covered throughout the virtual content series that we'll be running throughout the course of the year. So thank you again. And I wish you all a healthy and happy new year and a great holiday. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you, Ryan.